Hello everybody, Tiago here. Welcome back to my Go live stream. Today we keep working with our URL shortener, and the topic for today is refactoring. So we wrote some code, it's working, but not the most organized code. So today we're gonna do some more refactoring. The focus for today is to get the handlers on their own package and also the middlewares on their own package. If there is some time, we're gonna clean up more the code. I was looking at the code, there's some pieces and bits that need a bit of cleanup. We still have some print debugs there that need to be removed. So yeah, let's get started. Let's go main.co. So our idea is to create a handlers package. So first thing I'm gonna do is create the file and handlers.go, make directory, package handlers. Okay, so we have our file, and I'm gonna first just start copying out some code. So we have a handler struct that has a database. Database, we define the interface internally. So, and we have a new handler. So let's just copy this whole bit of code, go back to handlers, paste it there, and start organize a bit. So the database needs to be public, so other people can access and implement it. I should have refactored that instead of just edit the code. We have a handler struct, so let's make it exported. Sp rename handlers.handler is definitely not a good name. It stutters, but I'll keep it like that for now because I don't have a bad idea. We could have handlers dot, I don't know, URL handlers dot shortener. Handlers dot shortener looks good. Handlers dot shortener. Okay, and the database interface that's exported there, and then we don't need new handler anymore, just new. So new is gonna give a new shortener that contains, it's gonna contain our handlers. And if we go back to our main.co and look actually the methods on our handler struct, we have save URL and we have get URL. So I'll just type the methods here. Func my handler should be s. That's a shortener. Save you. Save you. My caps lock's not working. I haven't learned that. One second, my keyboard's crazy. That's the good part about live streams. If you make a mistake, you need to fix it live. So my keyboard was with the wrong layout, and usually just fix it by unplugging, replugging. It's the easiest way. So now my caps lock works again. Save URL. And we want the save URL method to be a handler func. So it's going to receive a W, that's http.response writer, and the R, that's a pointer to http.request, and doesn't return anything. And another func that's going to pass shortener, get URL, the same thing, copy and paste. And we have our methods, at least, that we can use in our main.co, and they should be able to get a working code there. So I'll copy the implementations later. really want to start using on main.co first. So main.co, we parse the configuration, we start the logger, open SQL connection, and then we created the handler. We have two options here, the one with Postgres and the one with in memory. So I'll do a new one. That's gonna be handlers.new, and I'll pass the same TP we had here. So linters are not complaining. Of course, we don't have save and get URL like that. It's save and get URL. So far so good. Seems that the code, at least the editor, doesn't complain. So let's actually copy some chunks of code. See if everything's gonna go nicely there. Handlers, that was which method? I forgot. Save URL. Save URL and pass the code. Let's see. The imports are there. My editors complain about h dots. It's not h, it's s. I'm not really happy calling it s, but let's leave it like that for now. So the shortener db.set, and that's good to go. Everything seems about right. And of course, we need to document our functions. I'll do that in a minute. And the get URL. Let's copy it as well to our get URL method that is here. Same things, not h, it's s. And we've got sdbget. Don't have one interaction with TDB each. Seems to be working. So every exported type and method should have their comments. So let's do something nice. Database. What can we write here? So database is the interface the handler needs to access the database. So database is, so describes a data store. Use it by shortener to store shortened URLs data. Shortened URLs data. Not very creative today. Shortener. The struct that provides shortener provides http dot handler func methods to save and store, no, to save and get, get shortened URLs. So we have shorteners, we have everything. New. So new returns a new shortener. Initializing returns a new shortener. Initializes and returns a new shortener. Yeah, very important. The DB isn't exported, so we really need a constructor to set that field. And then you have everything else here. Get and set. Of course, we need to document those methods as well. Save URL. And gets where so what I want here is actually describe how it works. That's the important part. The parsing of the URL parameters here, not the URL parameter, the query string. So, and what it does, save, read, the URL where a string saves it on a DB. It on no, saves it using a database. So save reads the URL string parameter, saves it using a database. Let's make it better. I want to describe that it shortens the URL. Not finding the best words right now. So save reads the URL core string, generates a, let's call it token for it, and saves them using a database. Okie dokie. So get URL. Get URL. It does the opposite. Reads the to query parameter, looks it up on database, not database, base on database if tokens found, if the parameter is found, and the parameters looked it up on the database if it's found, if it finds a for it a redirect returned. You just need to check which one is temporary redirect. It finds a error for it. It temporary redirect is returned. A temporary redirect is returned. Not super happy with return it here because technically not returning something. Response. The handler responds if a temporary redirect. If I allow for it, if it finds a for it a temporary redirect. I already forgot what I said. Then the response is a temporary redirect to the line to this URL. Not URL, the max. Okay, so should main.go. So if everything's correct, I can get rid of this code. I just comment out the code. Even though I have get, I don't want to delete it right now. Just for the sake of simplicity. Then we have everything. Pop, pop, pop. And we should be able to test. So let's get my helper things. Let's start a Docker container. Docker is not running on my machine. Okay, so let's start a Docker container. You have to remove rename. Oh, you have a Docker container, right? And Docker ps minus all Docker stop URL Docker remove. And now let's start it again. We need to connect to the database and run the create table there. Connect to the database and run the create table, because you get an empty database every time we restart it. Create table, that's it, and okay, so should be able to run. I really need to automate this database creation, but I want to keep the automation to more to the end and focus on coding today. So okay, so go run dot. Okay, HTTP service listening at port 300, so it says it works. Then I'm just gonna quickly make a request there just to see it opens, and then let's actually make a request. If I go to my browser, if I get the keybinds right, so we use slash save URL. Let's do it ps tiago.live, and gives us a token, and then you should be able to do go to in our URL, and it loads my website. So our code still works. So let's go back to Emacs, clean up a bit more. So now we don't need all these things we commented out. If we go down, we can remove all this code. For now, I'll keep those helpers, handlers, and stuff. Just keep it there. We only use that for debugging. Find it useful to have it there at this moment. That was bothering me. Memory, I'll just leave like that. Actually, the memory is not gonna work anymore, but that's okay. And let's delete it, not this one. Cool. So we have our handlers package, handlers file, even though I have only one handler, but I find that handler sounds better. Maybe I'll rename it later. Not a big deal. So, okay. So we did that. Now let's, so we did that. Oops, done. That was pretty quick. So let's go back to main.co and let's start refactoring, or not refactoring, yeah, like moving our middlewares. So we have a couple middlewares we created here, right? You have this request ID handler. It's not even a handler, but that's gonna add our request ID to our context. And then we have also, go back. Where is my middleware? Here. And we have request logger that actually does our logging for our request. Request started and finished, that it logs. So let's move all of this to a, not a package, a middleware package. Middleware. Middleware. Cool. Package middleware. Yes, Emacs, please create a directory for me. And here we want request logger. Same thing. I'm just gonna copy the code. Once everything's working, I'll rename it. So middleware.request logger. Reads good, sounds good. So keep this one like that. What other middlewares we have? A request ID handler. That's not even a handler, it's a middleware. So not yet. We don't need the whole code base. We just need that method. Yes. Okay, so request ID handler, that also needs that request ID function. What's the function? So let's copy it as well. And oh, good. So request ID is not handled anymore. It's colliding with that one. So that's the request ID meter. This request ID, it gets the request ID from the headers. So this one doesn't need to be exported. Let's just call it that request ID from request. Request ID from request. Yeah. Request ID. And then we can rename this one to just request ID. So we have midor.request ID. And let's use that on our main.go. We navigate in the right position. Okay, so what was this one? Now it's going to be r.use a midor me request ID. That's going to have the rec ID as the field name and request ID as the header name. Remote, I'll keep these ones from 0 log, user range, and refer and IP. We probably can do a very simple implementation to have one logger meter that does everything, but let's do step by step. So dot that was the request logger. Meter.request logger and meter.request ID. So we have our meters, we create a request ID, we add some extra information to the logger, then we do the request logging. So we moved everything. Let's see if our code actually works. Terminal, queue the application, start again. Oh my. So it's running. So let's go to the browser. I always press the wrong button. So localhost 3000. And then let's go back to Emacs and see if our meters are working. So request started, URL was slash method get full bar. I think we need to do some cleanup here. There's the IP, it's IPv6. We have a request ID, we have the user agent, that's gigantic. And we have a request finished as well with IP address and everything. So our meters are working. That's pretty good, as expected. We just refactored the code, so nothing should have broken. So we don't need request logger, we don't need request ID, we don't need request ID handler. Recursion needed request ID. Lost now. Recursion needed request ID to read the request ID from the request, because that was the bug stuff we wrote. So not the debug stuff, but to understand the things working. Just comment that out. To be honest, I'm gonna move all of this to another file already. And debug examples. Think about the best name for that. Debug.code. Debug's not really debug. It's not a test. Example.go. My and what did I paste here? Did I paste the right thing? No, I didn't paste the right thing. So my idea is to just copy the code here, because it's actually interesting code to have. around, but now it's broken. We can fix it later. Just move the code so our main.co is clean. And I'm actually just gonna add that at the top of the file. Thank you, Emacs. That's not what I wanted. Put things back there. Cut, save, go back there. Okay, so just a comment. This file, this blob. Just write some comments. So this file contains some handler as we use it to test the request ID implementation. I might just end up removing this thing because in the final application doesn't make sense to have it. So, but I kind of like sometimes to keep code around until I'm sure I don't want it anymore. And we might still use it to demo some stuff at some point. So I'd rather keep it around for a little longer. Okay, we cleaned it up our route. So we only have saving goal. And I want another route. I want I'm gonna create a new handler because I just want to be able to actually call the application to see if the HTTP handler is working. So I'll just do a func hello, and hello is gonna be a HTTP handler func whttp dot response writer, and an r it's a pointer to an http dot request. And the only thing it's gonna do is gonna say hello world fmt dot f print f. It's gonna print on w hello world. That moment you don't know how to write world anymore. World. Hoping writing that's right. And that's all I need for now. And then let's have another one, r.get on slash on the root path. I want and slash.hello. So we should just be able to call the root of our application and get something nice. Terminal. Does it compile? Yes. Does it run? Yes. Can we test it? Let's go to the browser and just call the application, and you have a beautiful hello world. If we go back to the code, our logs are working nice and fine. So that was pretty quick. So let's clean up some code. Just update our agenda. Done. Cut just looks nicer. Yay. Main.co. So I mentioned to clean up some code because we still have some print debug here and there. So our main.co, we have config, panic with printf. Just panic, it's okay. We don't need full bar on our logger. We just want the timestamp for now. Set output to console instead of JSON. We should configure that later. Open the connection, Postgres, logger fatal, logger fatal. It's okay. What else do we need to do? And then we do everything and then you panic. So the first thing I'm gonna change, just gonna check what logger fatal does. Fatal starts a new message, fatal level, then OS exit 1. So I don't want fatal. What I want is panic. If something goes wrong, the application is gonna panic instead of calling OS exit 1. So the difference for that in Go is when you do panic, like all the deferrers are still gonna run, the runtime still does more cleanup. So it's a more graceful exit of your application, even though it's still panic. When you do os.exit 1, you basically just stops everything. The fares don't run anymore. And some other cleanup the runtime would do. There's some stuff that might not run as well. A few other stuff like the defer. So panic is a more graceful way of finishing the application. And for us, it doesn't matter if you have the whole stack trace printed there. We're still just developing the application. We're gonna run like ourselves, not like a product that we write or a CLI application. So it's better actually to have more information of what's breaking. So cool, let's clean it up. So let's go to our handlers package and see. The database we have set and get. They both have context, key, and error. That's nice. Shortener. Maybe rename that later. I'm not super happy, but works for now. Save URL. Well, this thing doesn't know where it is anymore. So I think I'm just gonna write an example here. Example. Some path. Some path. And then I have a query string. Let's do example.com. www.example.com/some path. Just to have an example of how it works. And I'm going to put my website. Column // Tiago.life. It's going to be a basic. And now let's see our code. You get context, you get logger, read string, you generate a new UUID. We parse the URL to see if it's valid. We don't need this log print debug here. Then what we do, not parse URL, you write a message. We don't even add error there. To the headers. So we actually need that, but using our logger. I'm gonna do logger.info mstf logger.info.r mstf instead of r. Cannot parse URL, and I'm gonna put the URL with %q and the arrow with %e or %s and use method arrow. And I want to do the URL that's b. Cool. So my limit is complaining because it don't have a comma. So logger inf. Why am I using info? Because that's a user error. So if a user sends an invalid URL, like in not ideal world, but if this is a live application, those endpoints are exposed to the internet. I don't want to mix the actual errors from the application, like when the application broke something, from when the user sent something wrong. So that's a user error, even returning bad request. That's the 4xx range of status code. That's a user error. So let's just use info. So I'm just the information log say, hey, that's the reason why we returned a bad request, not a success. And for the user, we send for them a beautiful message, not parse URL. And of course, we don't send the error for the user. They don't need to know the details for now. And also make sure that we're not like leaking information from errors and everything, but to tell them that URL is invalid. And when you use zero log, you have this error method that adds the error in the error log. Actually, yeah, I did that, so I don't need to add it on the message. So I just need that. mstf cannot parse URL, so that's my error log message, and the error is going to be on the error field, as it should be. Saving on the database, error, cannot set in Postgres, just do internal server error for the user. That looks pretty good. After all, the user doesn't need to know that the database broke. It's not even Postgres here, cannot set into database. Because our shortener handler doesn't know if it's a Postgres, if it's in memory, if it's SQLite or whatever. It only knows about the database interface we define it here. So it doesn't make sense to have the Postgres name there. Write internal server error, just write this text to the user and the nice message for a user. Yeah, we do it here, you write, and we just log info, save URL. So we're just gonna make it match the method name with key and parameter. What we need is actually a way to list all the URLs we have at some point. Probably not useful to keep it exposed, but me as a developer, like I would like to ask my application, hey, what URLs you have? Especially if I'm trying to debug something. But what am I doing? So let's also put an example here. Example. So www.example.com/go to, yeah, I'll leave like that. Ready v4. Get ready for the parameter. And let's just check our code. You get it, calling key. We do db get the string URL. If there are no rows, cannot find token, we just do return not found. And then we cannot read, if there's actually error, we say cannot read data and a log error. We return for the user's internal server error, and you just log that we did get URL. That, and think about removing those logs very soon, so we have cleaner log output. Okay, just we clean it up a bit. Let's see how it's going. Terminal. Run. Just gonna quickly call the home, like slash. It's there, it's nice. No more excess full bar fields. We still don't have the how long the request took to process. I want to add that later on. Let's try to save a URL. So, and then get the URL. So let's go to the browser. And so, I cannot save the same one. So let's save calling.org. Save it and let's visit calling.org. Go string 2. And we can go to calling.org. Yes. So back to Emacs. Just check the logs. Everything seems alright. Request started. Save URL. All the fields there. Request finished. We have the save URL log here. So with the data that we saved, our logs, and the same thing to get URL, should have it here. Not really necessary to have that. So let's clean up that as well. Handlers. Let's remove those logs. And on the one as well, on the save as well. So one thing I want to do now. So now we have everything cleaned up. More or less, not extra logging. So I want to do two things now. So this write method actually can return an error. And this first integer is the number of bytes written. So we're not really interested on that, because it either works or not like we need to handle if not everything. Like if we pass a too big of a byte slice, we don't have to handle it. Golang is going to take care of writing everything for us, but we are interested on that error because things might go wrong, right? So if I don't want the first one, error equals error, it's not nil. So what I want to do here is I just want to log error, error, error dot msg writing response. Uh, yeah, I'll put the name of the method, save URL, oh, writing response. So check if I'm the right method. Yes. So if for some reason this write breaks, I want to have a log error. I want to know what's happening. That's a very hard error to actually to reproduce. Basically, what needs to happen is like the client needs to disconnect before we write the response. Or another thing that could cause this error is if you set a timeout on the context, everything like, and by the time we call write, no, it wouldn't cause an error. Timeout on the context here. There's no context here. But if the global context has a, not the global, if you set a timeout on the context and you take too long to write some stuff, the context can be cancelled. The handler fails, but I don't think we'd get the error here. But yeah, it's mostly like client disconnecting, things like that. Most of the case, like there's no much what to do. It's not like we can recover for those from those kind of errors. But it might be very interesting to have any statistics of that. Like in this case, it's pretty like if the database is too slow and all the time our clients are not waiting enough, then we see you can see that the clients are canceling. So and then we said, okay, maybe our application needs to be faster and things like that. It's just extra information of how your application is behaving. And also the error there, shouldn't be moving the code. I'm doing like two things at the same time, moving and thinking. And the error here is actually from the IO writer interface. Yeah, they jumped directly to the HTTP implementation. But yeah, if you go to the cat URL, like when you look at these helpers from the standard library, you see it doesn't return an error because like an HTTP is going to handle everything on HTTP and that's it. Yeah, those right from the status code. We could also look at errors here, but yeah, get very cumbersome. For now, what I'm gonna do, those ones I'm gonna ignore because they are errors we already broke. But I'm interested in like the successful case. If for some reason something goes wrong, then I want to know when it went wrong and why. Redirect also doesn't return an error, so we don't need to handle anything. So we have cleaner logs now. And so let's look at your middleware, our middleware, the request logger, not the request ID. So what we're doing, we initialize, get the logger, just put some blank lines here. We print starting request, we call server TP and do request finished. But what we want to do is actually have some of this information as fields on the logger. So if you go to the terminal and they scroll up, you see when the request finished, they only have as fields request ID, user agent, full bar, we remove it. But what I want to do is actually add as fields something like the URL that was called. So a blog entry is going to have the URL. So it's a bit easier to, like any log that you see, you know the URL it's coming from, don't need to correlate tracking these. So zero log allows us, sorry, some reason my voice not so good. Sorry for that. For some reason my voice is not so good today. Okay, so where was I? Yes. So I want to add the URL and the method as part of the logger itself. So every log line after that, it's gonna have this information there. And then also we can add other information there. So this meter we call the request logger. So it's going to be responsible to add to the logger every information we find helpful and we want to have there. So zero log allows us to modify the logger directly. So if I do logger dot update context, that's update context going to take a function that receives a zero log context and returns a zero log context. So this context is basically those log fields there. So we can add more, and then this logger that we modified, you see it's a pointer receiver. You're actually modifying the logger. It's gonna have it. So any other log line that happens at any point, it's gonna have that data. So then you need to do a func here that gets a c, that's zero log dot context, and returns a zero log dot context, and that's a function. Did I miss something? I missed my return. So the idea of this function of the zero log is like every time you call a method on the context, it returns a new one. So I need to go modifying. So you need to do like c equals c dot like str to the string field, and then you could do a URL, and then r dot URL dot string, and yeah. So if you look, c returns a context. So and then you can do c equals c dot str. I think there's a str's method. Nope. What to have method? A method like HTTP method. So r dot method. Could even call it HTTP method or call it HTTP method. It's very clear that's the HTTP method. So then the next log lines are gonna have that. And instead of request finished, I think I want to do something different here. But let's see. That's what request finished processing. I'll do finished processing request. Request. I'm thinking about making this message, make something like more closer to the Apache access logs, but we already have lots of fields there. But I think this string doesn't do everything, or I'll do URL.path. Path, yes. So URL path. If I have query string and everything, it's not gonna affect anything. And here I'll do msgf, and then I do something like the method, and for now the URL. So our method, hope that's capital, and r dot URL dot string, the whole thing. Okay, so let's see that in action. Terminal, go run. So I'm just gonna make a request to slash, and then we see the logs. Let's see the logs. So I have get on slash. That's the message, right? And then you have the fields now URL, and we should have the field here HTTP method. If I put a query string, so I'm gonna put query string full bar, full equals bar, and I make another request. I have get full bar, but then on my URL, I just have the path. So I'm actually gonna rename this field for URL path, so I know that's the path. So like for example, if you have actually path parameters, or yeah, so then you can just have the whole path here instead of having extra parameters or big query strings. So here you have like a cleaner URL. That would be easy if you need to search for it or something. We don't need to worry about query strings because probably they're not changing the handler we're using and things like that. And here on get, we have like the whole URL that the client sent to us, so we know what's happening. So let's rename that URL there, URL to URL path. And then you call the server HTTP, and then we do the logger here, and we have everything. So that looks pretty good. We still have like 10ish minutes today. I'm still trying to keep within an hour those streams. Let's see what else we can do. Request ID looks nice. What we can do, I mentioned about those like remote ID handler, user agent. I don't need user agent handler. So those actually we can add those informations ourselves on our middleware, and then we have one middleware that does everything for us. Even referrer. I don't think you need referrer, but IP and user agent. So let's add it to our middleware, IP and user agent. So here we're adding all the information, right? So c dot IP I think comes as a string. So let's see. IP yeah. So request, it should have a method remote ADDR. Yep. Allows HTTP servers and other software to record the network address that send the request, usually for logging. Exactly. That's exactly what we're doing. We're logging. And we want also the user agent. Not stack str user agent r dot user agent is a function that returns a string. Just see the documentation. Return the client's user agent if sending the request. Yeah, because the user agent is sent as request headers, you might not send it. If it's sent, then user agent is gonna get it. So we can go to our main.co and refer. I don't think we need to refer. I'm curious if co provides something to get the refer. I don't remember on top of my head. It also provides a referrer, but at least as of now, I'm not interested as refer. At least not on logging at this moment. I'm focusing on the login information. Actually, understand if something goes wrong, why, when, like serving which request, whom, and the refer is more like forget, like let's say business metrics, right? From where are my clients, like my users coming? Are they coming like from Google, like organically, or going from another website or things like that? For now, I'm not considering that very interesting for all logging. But yeah, so just double check. I removed everything. So we only have our meters here. Let's go to your terminal. Stop everything. Do a go run. So I'll make one request to just the root, hello world. And then we have get slash HTTP method get. We have the IP address here. We have the port the client connected on. We have a request ID, URL path, and the whole user agent. That for browsers is gigantic. We can try to go somewhere just to see the logs. 3000 go. If I get the thing right, cannot find token. Of course, I don't remember the tokens anymore. And I think I cleaned it up. I don't have them, but we have our logs. Let's see. Cannot find token. Blah blah blah. That was on my URL. We have out. So as I said, so this log line came from the HTTP handler. I can show there in the code in a minute. But then we have all the fields we set on that middleware because we modified the logger. Another that was or the bug level or error level. Cannot read data from database. No entry for key. Blah blah blah. Method get and all or nice log fields. And the final access log. It's info get, and then we can see the whole URL that was called. And of course, all the fields are there as well. And yeah, I think that has been a pretty nice refactoring today. Let's try keep the code like in the same style. If the logging and everything together, it's on that if, also everything together on the other if statement. Let's check our get if we're keeping code style consistent. Yes, we are. Good. Hello. And good. So let's check our main.go. Just last glance on the whole code base. Let's see everything's nice. Logger has timestamp with panicking instead of doing OS exit 1. That was done by the logger. When we do fatal, we still panic here. It's okay. And let's see our agenda. Of course, we met everything. We cleaned it up with the code. Let's call it done. So, thank you everybody for watching today. So yeah, today was refactoring, making the code more organized. That gets very important as the project grows and we go away from that one main.co messy file to actually organizing stuff. In the future episodes, I'm still planning what I'm gonna do. Haven't decided yet. If you have any suggestions, you can put on the comments or reach out to me on Twitter. The Twitter link is on the YouTube page. I still need to learn to put links and live links during the stream. I'll figure that out at some point. And yeah, send suggestions if you want. Probably very soon I'm going to start with testing so we can actually make sure our code works. Like with automated testing, you don't need to do much manual testing. Probably implement a few more features and at some point also look at instrumentation. So again, thank you very much. I hope you like it. And yes, have a nice weekend. Bye bye.